Hey, what's the deal, YouTube? It's your girl, Miss Honey. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back. Oh, that felt good. I just feel like I cleaned, just got it all out. Okay. I hope you guys are doing great today. It is your girl, Miss Honey, here for another movie review. The last review that I did for a movie was also a Netflix movie, and that was The Harder They Fall. If you guys have not seen that movie or my review for that movie, please check that out. Remember to also thumbs it up and share it. Listen, we're here to talk about Passing, which is yet another Netflix movie that I had the privilege of watching this past weekend. Shout out to one of my subbies who DM'd me in IG and just reminded me that it was on my, to watch list and they wouldn't mind hearing a review. Kim, this is for you. Now, Kim was not raving about the movie per se, so much as the era, the 20s, and the garb, the clothing, if you will, the chapeaus, the lovely dresses, the beautiful, simplistic makeup, textures, tones, this type of stuff. She knows that that is what we like over here. This is how we, how we relate. We relate in textures and tones over here, you guys. So this is what Kim really, really loved about the movie. For me, I don't know. The movie is in black and white, okay? I want to say that there's going to be spoilers in this review, but it feels a bit over dramatic to say spoilers since the movie itself is not too eventful per se. Like it's okay, so let's just talk about it. The movie is called Passing, and it's really all about it gives the idea, when you first read it, it feels like it's this conversation. It's going to be this conversation about really, really light black women or who may be of mixed race or just born lighter skinned than others being able to pass in the white world. And I know automatically you start thinking about Lovecraft Country, and the elixir, right? That was a little bit different because she actually became a white woman. Like her skin, you have to be a Lovecraft Country person to understand that physical reference, right? A white woman. This is about black women who have an extremely lighter hue to their skin being able to pass in the white world, right? Like no one's, if someone comes upon the idea that they are less than white, they're in trouble, right? The movie stars Tessa Thompson. You guys may remember Tessa Thompson from Men in Black 2, 3, or 4. I'm not sure. Thor. She does a really good job in Thor. And then Creed 1 and 2. She played his girlfriend. So I like her. She's a good actress and she emotes very well. It also stars Ruth Negga, who is, I think ethnically she is Ethiopian. I don't know if that's an ethnicity. She's Ethiopian. Whatever that is, that's what she is. And she played in Preacher. She played in Loving. I loved her in Loving. She did a really, really good job. In Loving, she played a black woman that was married to a white man, right? And that movie was really about their struggle to be married and in love and have their children. He against his race and her being perceived by his race as well as her race as, I don't know, kind of like Sellout, or it's a good movie. It also stars Andre Holland, Alexander Skarsgård, who, as you guys know, played in True Blood. Antoinette Crow Legacy, who she played the daughter in The Godfather of Harlem, the one that was strung out and then she was taken in by the Muslims and she got clean and she became Muslim and she was secretly in love with Malcolm X. If you guys have not seen Godfather of Harlem, check that out. I should have done a review for Godfather of Harlem. I was actually requested to do a review for Godfather of Harlem, the whole series. But Godfather of Harlem is my, tasty little pleasure. It is my movie bonbon, right? I like to enjoy it. I like to binge it. I like to take the whole thing at one time and just eat it piece after piece after piece with a nice glass of red wine. I do not want to be stressing out over getting every detail. I just want to watch it and enjoy it, right? Like, I love Godfather of Harlem. Okay. Anyway, I digress. And then we have Gabinga Akanabi. Gabinga Akanabi. Okay. And he plays, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not sure which role he plays. Anyway, director of this movie is Rebecca Hall. Now, she's a British actress, and on first glance, she just looks like a regular white woman. But she's British, which is kind of, anyway. And she's an actress. Now, I discovered all of this. I looked at who was directing the movie and who was in the movie and all of this before I started watching it, right? This and I didn't find out more details about the director until after I had watched the movie, because I was kind of trying to figure out, why wasn't this movie more impactful for me? Like, why was I so divided about being entertained? I love black and white movies. I love period pieces. I love a good story, especially when it is birthed out of our culture and the struggle therein, right? But I just wasn't connecting. Like, I was just so down the middle, like, take it or leave it with this movie. It just was not as impactful as, let's say, The Harder They Fall, or other movies that we've seen from, that was birthed kind of out of the culture, right? So I was like, what's going on here? Tessa and Ruth both are reasons why we should get excited about this movie. But I just wasn't connecting. Now, so let's just talk a little bit about the director. The director, Rebecca Hall, is born of a white father and a white and Native American mother. So her mother, who was a famous opera singer, was white and Native American. And when you look at her mother, you're like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe Rebecca's interest in this movie was because her mom was able to pass, or was her mom passing? Like, when you see her mom's picture, you're like, okay, not all the way Caucasoid. So, read a little bit more and I find out that she's part Native American. I was like, okay. Again, I found this out after I had watched the movie, and for some reason, it still didn't make the fact that this white woman wrote this story about black women passing in the 1920s more palatable. To me, the movie felt like a white woman wrote it. It didn't feel like a woman who had some semblance of an idea of or experience or knowledge of what passing could remotely possibly be like, had wrote it. Like, it just felt like a white woman wrote it. I mean, in my opinion, it was a little, I don't know. You guys, if you've seen it, you guys, tell me if you get what I'm saying, right? I don't want to go too long about it, but it's important. This is from a book called Passing, by Nella Lawson, who was a novelist, a nurse, and a librarian. She was a master in all three of those things. And it was written during the Harlem Renaissance, right? And Nella herself was a very, very fair-skinned Black woman, right? She was a mixed race, but Black woman nonetheless. When we open the scene, we see Tessa Lawson's character, whose name is Irene, but she's going to be referred to as Renee throughout the movie. She is shopping. And the first thing I noticed is that she's got this beautiful hat on that had like a sheer lip to it. It was almost like a veil, but it was the bill of the hat, but it was just sheer. And in those days, hats were more sculpted to the head. They weren't these broad, wide rim hats. They were more like, accoutrement. It was more like a little, right? So she has this hat on, and to me, she doesn't appear to be passing in this moment. When we meet her, she appears to be hiding to me. Just in that first scene, she appears to be hiding. She seems to be very, very cautious, almost skittish. And you, again, in the back of my mind, I realize she is passing, but at the same time, what stands out to me more than anything is this sense of hiding. She seems as though she's hiding. She is afraid that, someone will peek up under that hat a little too closely and know that she is in fact a Black woman. To me, as a Black woman, she looks like a fair-skinned Black woman. Beautiful, very sweet, very demure, very professional, the whole nine. But from the time that she talks to the shopkeep, picks up a little pickaninny doll to hand to a white woman, it's almost like this. She's just pushing the envelope just a little bit, just by interacting with them. And she exudes that. Tessa Thompson exudes that in her demeanor. So it translated over beautifully, right? It's not the actresses. For me, it's the writing and the directing. It just lacked something for me. But again, I digress. Super, super hot in the city. She goes to a beautiful, like, 5-star hotel. This again, we see her take a deep breath when she gets in the car, and she's feeling very unsure about if she's showing or not. You know what I mean? Showing. And she pulls her hat down, and the driver confirms that she is passing quite well when he says, "Oh, you want to go to this 5-star hotel?" Obviously, ma'am. She doesn't even have to say, "Take me this place or that place." Just by her skin tone and her complaint about the heat, he assumes that her whiteness wants to go to this 5-star hotel to have a bit of tea and to cool off a bit. And so she's pushing the envelope here. This is a little bit of an adrenaline rush for her as well, even though she's skittish and a bit afraid. She pushes the envelope and she goes to this hotel. They have a restaurant and they seat her and no one knows. Now, it is crickets. Most of the background for this movie is just silence. There's just very little background sound. I don't even remember the bustle of the town when she was in the town earlier in the city shopping. There are moments where there is music and there is dancing and there is conversation, but it comes across in this really whispery kind of way. It's not anything that, I don't know, adds to the story at all. It's just this really undeveloped background, so to speak. So there's a couple canoodling, and there's two old white women that look like they've just been propped up there. They're not even talking to one another. One looks half asleep and the other looks, like she's been tased or something. And so this couple walk in, and the man seats the woman and sits down, and she is sitting in the further background from Rennie. And Rennie looks at her, and she sees that the woman is looking directly at her. And she adjusts the hat and puts her head down, and then she kind of looks around because she's thinking to herself, if this white woman that's looking at me, who just sat down, notices that I am black, I need to have my plan of escape. I've got all these things. I've been shopping for my son's birthday. I'm going to gather these things and I'm going to go. You can see her working that plan B out in her head, right? And the woman gets up and comes over and sits down and talks to her. And she's just, and then she says, wait a minute. She's gotten up. Irene's gotten up. And she is like, oh, she's about to apologize. And the woman was like, how are you? I mean, can I sit with you? It's so good to see. Wait a minute. Aren't you Irene? Renee? Don't you recognize me? It's me, Claire. And Irene is like, Claire? Claire is like, Claire from high school. Claire from our childhood. And they sit down and they both play the role. Irene is puzzled. She is just like, but Claire, you're so white. You're so white looking. Now to me, Ruth Negga, who plays Claire, a woman who is living in the passing world. She's married to a white man, a banker, and she lives in white society. And she comes over and she's got a cigarette, darling. It's the 20s, and and she's talking, but it's these short, echoey tones that they talk in. It's kind of like talking through a megaphone, right? Hello, darling. How are you? Don't you know me? It's really, well, of course. Sit, darling, sit. Oh, you simply must come and have a drink in my suite. You simply must. I better not. Oh, you simply must. Please, I won't take no for an answer. Come, darling. And she whisks her upstairs. But before they go up, Irene is so befuddled, she asks her after she tells her, me, Irene, I'm married to a doctor and I have 2 sons. And Claire says, I'm married to a banker and I have a daughter. And Irene can't help herself. She's just like, girl, you are giving full whiteness, girl. She says, does he know? Claire shakes her head. And it was almost like, girl, I got them all fooled, right? There is this feeling from Claire that she's accomplished something. And not for nothing, she has. She's absolutely pulled it off, right? Like, she's doing it out here, right? All the benefits of being a white woman, and no one knows that she's really black. Like Claire for the win. This is how Claire comes off. Even when they go to her room and she's having a little drinky drink, one of many, many drinky drinks she will have in this movie. Because we slowly see that Claire is not happy, right? She makes a quip about her daughter. She doesn't want to have another child because she's afraid that child will come out darker. She barely skated by when her daughter came out white and looking white. And so she's not going to risk take the risk of having another baby because that baby may come out a little bit darker. Now, when they were downstairs and Claire went to touch her neck, I noticed that her hands were darker than her face. Markedly darker, in my opinion. So, the things that Claire is saying comes across like a racist white woman when she makes the comment about her daughter. And when she asks about Irene's kids being dark or husband being a regular black man. And, these things come across a little racist, a little microaggressive, right? And Irene is giving us that. She's feeling like, girl, I went to school with you. Can we just talk for a minute without you being? Um, in walks Claire's husband, and he calls her Nig, right? Remember, he doesn't know. The reason he's calling her Nig, which is short for, what, is because when he first married her, fresh out of high school, right after her daddy had died and living with her aunts, her daddy was white, right? Her mom was mixed, okay? And so, that combination, and then living with white aunts, the husband, when he courted her and married her, just thought she was a white girl. And so she was super, super white then. As she's gotten older, she's gotten a little, her tone is set in a little deeper. And so he calls her Nig because he swears up and down that she's getting darker and darker. If he didn't know better, he would think that she was a black woman. And so Irene is just offended enough and brave enough to say, so you don't like black people? But she doesn't say black people. She says the N word, and he says, no, that's not it. I hate them. And Claire is sitting there on the sofa next to him like, he's an idiot, I know. Like he's stupid. He's none the wiser, right? Not like she went and bought a dress for $3,000 and he thinks it's $20, right? It's that satisfaction that she's giving. Irene gathers her things and goes on because she's getting more and more uncomfortable as the minutes go by. I mean, if this man were to even remotely catch a hint. Now, she's not as light as Claire, right? To me, they both look like black women, but Tessa's lips are a lot fuller. And, her features are a little bit more beautiful, textured, fuller, filled out, so to speak, right? She's not giving us thin, frail, glass jawed. She's not giving any of those things. And so she gathers her things and goes on home. Well, she gets home and her husband is there napping, and she takes his shoes off lovingly. She's so glad to be back home in Harlem, where she lives with her husband, who's a doctor. They also have I guess a maid, a housekeeper, so to speak, Zoo, who works for them. She's a dark-skinned woman. And so she's so glad to be home. She kisses and hugs her husband up. They have some issues. Again, she's a woman in the 20s. She's considered to be this delicate flower. Even in the black, in her black, she's a doctor's wife. So there's a bit of affluence that they have as well. And in that world, she is delicate. You know what I mean? In the white world, she would be considered Zoo, the housekeeper, right? But in her own world, full of black people, she's a lighter version of black people. And so therefore, she holds a certain, standing within her home, within her own community, right? She's also doing some work within the arts, little philanthropy. She and her husband, he's an accomplished doctor. They've got 2 sons. And even though she felt glad to be home and she was glad to be out of that sense of panic and anxiety, the world that Claire lived in, Claire is where she is. And she's thinking, I would love to be around black people. I just want to be around my people. I want to be around people who dance, right? Who eat good, who laugh from their belly, who socialize, you know what I mean? Who, like I said, can dance, some texture. She seeing Irene just ignited in her what she felt was already missing. It's one of the reasons why she's drinking constantly. She's always alone. Even when she's with a bunch of people, she's alone. She has to be very, very careful. She doesn't even have a housekeeper herself, a maid herself. And the reason why is because there are only black people that are maids, and she can't have a black woman in there because that black woman could expose the fact that she herself, Claire, is a black woman. Passing. Anyway, the movie kind of drags in this middle, and it's kind of, to me, unsure what it wants to be. We see where Claire is continually coming down to Harlem to visit with Irene and her husband. We see that Irene's husband is getting very familiar with Claire, although at first he wanted his wife to stay away from her, considered her a bad influence once he met her. Just like every other black man, they considered her to be just super, super beautiful. Even the only other white man in the cast, an author, who is one of the people that Irene supports in her charity work, her philanthropy work in the art world, is enamored by Claire's beauty when they go to a party. And Irene, who is slowly realizing that having Claire around diminishes her a little bit more. She thinks in the eyes of her husband, also in the eyes of the community, it's almost like Claire is a breath of fresh air and she's a stale fart. The story shifts to this place where it looks like Irene has a bit of a problem with sleeping, a bit of depression. She comes across as unaccountable in some places. She, in an effort to take back whatever little relationship she had with Zoo, she appears to sort of rule over Zoo in this weird way, even though they're both black women, that I think Irene didn't want to do, but she was just positioned with everything that was going on in this way that made her want to assert herself. The problem is that she lives in an all-black world, so the people that she's asserting herself over are black people: her husband, her son, Zoo, her housekeeper. Meanwhile, Claire comes in like a butterfly. Her sons love her. Her husband is laughing and talking with her, and she's dancing with the husband here and there when they go to functions and parties and gatherings and bridge games. And it just seems like he is so much more happier with Claire at little things that Irene is looking at. It looks like he is throwing away what he has with her almost to be with something that is a little brighter. Figuratively, literally, you be the judge, right? And we see as the time goes on, this is happening for Irene, but also for Claire. Claire is getting more and more disenchanted. The more she comes down to Harlem and is with her people, the more she hates being with white people. The more bored she is, the more unbearable her husband becomes, and her life that she's built with her husband or she's had with this white man, it becomes more and more unbearable. And so she starts talking in sort of these bleak overtones. It's almost a little self-harming. It's definitely depressing. She's depressed. She's drinking. She's always got a flask of something and she's always pouring it in something. And she's clingy. She's she's having dinner there. They mention a party she wants to go. And Irene is just trying to go about her regular life and be her regular wonderful self. And she doesn't really want Claire in that. At the same time, she too is enamored by Claire. She too kind of recognizes Claire's fragility mentally and physically in a way. And it's almost like she wanted to have both. Like she wanted to be in this black world and she didn't want Claire in there, but she wants to kind of hang out with Claire, but she wants Claire to stay over there. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm over here and you're over there. And when we get together, let's get together where you are, because I don't want you influencing what I got going on over here. That's how it came across. And so it crescendoed in this way where Irene really began to kind of resent Claire. And Claire, who was absolutely in love with Irene's hue and everything she had, her sons, her husband, her lifestyle, her friends, her social engagements. Irene wanted every part of that. She was even chummying up with Zoo, the housekeeper, Irene's housekeeper, which is why Irene was kind of like, Zoo, get dinner on. Like, go on. Don't be talking to my housekeeper. So, she wanted everything that Irene had, and Irene was feeling that chokehold, right? Irene is out with her friend, the woman who was played by Antoinette Crowe Legacy, the girl from Godfather of Harlem. She's out and they're strolling. And, arm in arm, it's the 20s, and talking and laughing. And guess who she runs into? Irene's husband. And he recognizes her. He was like, oh, Mrs. Redfield, how are you? And she didn't say a word. She just looked at him. He was like, I mean, the way she did it, it was almost like he could have said, oh, maybe that wasn't her. Maybe I had her mistaken. And so when she walked off with her friend, Irene, her friend was like, what was that all about? I mean, when I tell you, baby, they didn't just walk off, they crossed the street. She said, you just met the only white, the only white man I ever had tea with or lunch with. Anyway, the only white man that thinks I'm white, right? Something like that. Anyway, she kind of laughed it off. At the same time, she never said a word to anyone about it, including Claire. And so they get ready to go to this party, and it's going to be at the top floor of this building. The elevator doesn't work, so they have to climb the stairs. The husband is leading the way. Irene's husband is leading the way. And midway, Irene and Claire stop to rub their feet. And Irene says to Claire, what would you do if your husband found out? She said, I would finally be free. I would be relieved. I would finally be free. And I'd come to live with you and your family down here in Harlem, where I really want to be. And Irene doesn't say anything. They go on upstairs, right? So they're having a good time at this party. Everyone is chummy with Claire. Everyone loves Claire. Claire has absorbed all of Irene's friends and her group, her social circle. Now, the writer, a very famous white guy, Claire had read his books. And when he first met Claire, he was enamored with her. He really wanted Irene to kind of set him up, even though he was there with his wife. And Claire was clearly married. Irene, in a passive-aggressive motion, lets him know that everything isn't what he sees. And he realizes instantly in that comment that Claire is actually black and not white. Now, that was shade on Irene's part. Irene was sick and tired of everybody talking about how wonderful Claire was. And she decided to take Claire down a peg or two by revealing the one thing she never should have told about her, right? It was something that they had together, and but she betrayed Claire in this way, because from that moment on, every time that white man who comes down to Harlem to hang with black people and was, associating with black people, accepted by black people down there, now thought less of Claire. And every time he said something about her, it was a slight, it was a dig. You know what I mean? It was successful. What Irene did passive aggressively successfully worked, because once he knew that she was black, even though he seemed as though he didn't have any problem with black people. I mean, his wife was on the dance floor with a black man. He thought less of her immediately once he knew. Right? So back to this party. They get to this party, which is on the top floor of this building, and everyone's having a good time. Everyone's enjoying Claire, and Irene is just, she's just off. She's been off for a while. She's been sleeping later. Her son made a reference about her going to, are you going back to bed? Are you going to bed now? And she was like, no, I'm not going to go to bed. So it just, like I said, slowly the story started to turn where she kind of seemed like she was unaccountable and aloof and depressed and distant in her own life and family, like unhappy. And Claire just kind of exacerbated that. And so it continues here at this party where she's kind of standing on the outskirts of everything and just looking. And so we hear this scuttlebutt at the door, and it is John, who is Claire's husband. And he wants to know where Irene is. I've been to your flat in Brooklyn, in Harlem. And they said that you were here. I know she's here. I know Claire's here. I want to speak to my wife. And he's like, sir, I'm almost sure, the man at the door, that who you want is not here. There is no white woman here. There's only black people here, sir. And he's like, And so he bursts in, because he's a white man and he goes wherever he wants to go. And he bursts in and everybody's like, ooh. And Irene is standing there and her husband and all the husbands are like right up front, like, sir, you can't, what's going on here? And the wives are standing back aghast. I mean, it is the 20s, right? And Claire walks up and her eyes, I mean, the tears that were pooled in the bottom of her eyes, I was like, if the wind blow, those tears are going to pour out like buckets. I mean, she was giving, right? He was like, you dirty, rotten liar, John tells Claire. And Claire, the buckets. You are a liar. You're a filthy liar, Claire. How dare you? Now he's upset and he's crying and he is disheveled. He cannot believe that this is a black woman. It has come to him when he saw Irene, and Irene did something. I'm sure she did something. Something, right? Because it's one thing to put it together, but it's another thing to come down there, to go to their home, and then to come to this party, right? It's a completely different thing. And he's irate and he's upset. Like, he not only has the knowledge that his daughter, or the idea that his wife is white, is black, but he seems sure about it, right? At this point. So it's like, he's raging and he goes towards her, and Irene puts her hand up as if to protect Claire. And just like that, for 15, 20 seconds, I wasn't sure what happened. Is Claire on the floor? The mood in the room, nothing told me. I mean, after like 15, 20 seconds, people started to scramble and, oh my gosh, and run downstairs, and everybody ran out and ran downstairs. I was like, where's Claire? We see where Irene goes to the window and she looks down and she's got her hands behind her back and she's not crying. She's just looks down and there's Claire. Claire is falling out the window. Was Claire pushed? Who pushed Claire? Was it John, the irate husband? Was it Irene? Irene, did you push Claire out the window? There's this scene, the ending scene, where Claire goes outside. Irene goes outside, and they're gathering. They're talking to the police, and they're telling the police that it was a complete accident. That she just fell. That he didn't intend to push her. He wasn't trying to push her. They're explaining to police officers, these black men, these black people are explaining to the police officer as Claire lays on the ground and John sits next to her, just completely devastated. I mean, it's like all of this was just dropped on him. Your dead white wife is there on the ground. And Irene walks up when they're to the black people and they say, she says, is she? Is she? Is she? Claire's right there. Claire's right there on the ground. You know, is she? Is she? And Irene's husband runs up and grabs her and scoops her up and This is the first audible we get from Irene since the show. Period. Since they got upstairs to the party, this is the first audible that we get from Irene. What the duck is going on here? What's happening? What are we doing? What are we doing? We trying to create drama? What are we doing here? What are we doing, Rebecca? What's happening? What are we doing? Are you know what I'm saying? Like, is it supposed to be this ambiguous idea of who shot John? Like, are we supposed to feel like which one pushed them? Pushed her? Did she just fall since she already was having these depressive conversations about self-harm, getting out of this off this gerbil wheel that she had built for herself, passing? Did he, through the scuffle, help her on out the window? Did Irene, who looked like she was blocking him from getting to her, inadvertently, Freudianly, subconsciously, push this girl out the window? Because she's jealous of her? I don't know. I don't know what we're supposed to gather. That is how the movie goes off. That is how it ends. We get nothing else. We're left with this supposition, depending on your viewpoint, what really happened in this movie. What's really going on in this movie. Right? For me, my retelling it is more entertaining for me than the watch. Do I think it's worth the watch? I absolutely do. I think it's worth the watch. I think it's worth the watch, like Kim said, for just the texture that we get to see in our community, the conversations that we get to see between a black doctor and his wife, and his black wife and his black children, and the conversations that are had between professional blacks back in the 20s. That alone is worth it. Tessa Thompson and Ruth Nega's portrayal of their characters, to me, is worth the watch as well. But I don't know. I don't know if I'm being biased. Maybe I am, because here is a white woman telling a black woman's story, right? Nella Lawson, who wrote the book, is a black woman. At the same time, I've not read Nella's book. I have not read Passing. I want to read it now. I'd love to have a copy of it now, and read it, because I'd like to know what how Nella told the story. I'd like to hear that. Really, and until I do that, I can't give it a thumbs down. I can say that although it's not as exciting as the movies we've seen in the past of people of color, it's an interesting watch. You guys have seen it. You tell me what you think. Put it down below. I'd love to hear, if you haven't seen it, what you think. Do you think you might watch it just based on my review? I'd love to hear that. Put it down below. If you're new to my channel, I'd love to have you subscribe. We do stuff like this all the time. And until next time, honeybees, mwah, mwah, mwah. I'll holla.